So I'm going to start taking the steering wheel apart. That's where the blinker connects. I got an aftermarket tack, which I'm going to pull off of there. Ignition is in there. Hazard switch. And then behind the steering wheel are these Phillips head screws. You got to take these off, and that can get the front of the steering wheel off. There's another one over here. Make sure to undo the battery terminals on this fan. It has 2 batteries, so make sure to do all of them, because you need to be able to turn the ignition in order to be able to get this ignition out. Meaning you don't want to have the engine turning over when you're doing that. This blinker here comes off, just unscrews. If you can't get it off, there's like a little flat spot here at the end that you can put a little wrench on if you need to, but mine's always been a little loose. So it just twists out. I'm going to try to hold this and take this off at the same time. And then this just unscrews. Now it should come off. Oh, it's still hanging there. And it has some connectors here that come off. These just come out. In fact, I'm surprised this is the way it is, but maybe this is how it's supposed to be. This just goes in that threaded hole. Oh, that's weird. And then these guys just slide off. There you go. Steering wheel cover is off. Like, you're actually right there. You can kind of see that these lines almost line up, so you could almost just use that. But I'm going to mark it anyway just to make sure I'm exactly where I was before. Just undoing the tachometer. Just let that kind of hang off to the side. Then I got to undo the nut. Okay, just finishing and taking this thing off. Took a little bit of work. To keep the steering stabilized, I actually put a like a steering locker on the wheel. Now, next you need is a steering puller, or really any sort of puller. Harmonic balancer puller will work. I'll set that up. A kit like this works pretty well. It's pretty universal. Basically, this thing just goes on. This goes on here just in a, in some sort of way, like that, and then you put the screws on there, and then it'll thread into these holes, and then as you pull it off, it'll just pop off. Turns out that my kit actually didn't have the right size. They wouldn't fit in these holes. So, went out and bought these size grade 8 bolts, and these should work. They don't have a flange on the end, but just a washer should be able to do it. Oh yeah, that's it. So that's what it looks like, and basically you just put a wrench on the end of this thing and you tighten it down, and that will push against this little bushing here. It's part of the puller that spins freely underneath, so that it will pull the steering wheel off. Well, just disengage the steering lock. Almost there. It's starting to come loose. There you go. With that apart, you're going to undo these retaining screws. Now, this is just for the blinker assembly. Don't take this one off just yet. And there's another one, Phillips, over there and right there, and that holds the blinker assembly in place. with the bolts out. This thing should just be able to kind of pull out. Now it's not going to pull out all the way because it's still fastened underneath the steering column. It should be enough to give you a little more room to work. So in order to get this ignition out, you need to put a dental pick or a small screwdriver on here and then push up on this. See it a little bit better. There it is on the new one. So there's this little stud that sticks out of here when the key is off. I turn it, this will start to come out a little bit. If I go back the other way too. So this is flat, and if I go all the way to off, you know, it's stuck out a lot. So that keeps it in place. You have to have it in on. So I turned it to on, and now this goes in just close to on, and then I should be able to push in on here, and then it'll release it. And you should be able to wiggle it out. But I pulled this cotter pin off of here, and I'm going to take these 3 screws out in the hopes I can get this column off of here. Took off a few more things. This cylinder cover here, so you can see where the ground is, and the pigtail that comes around. Also, right over here is the location of the light bulb, and then that's the retainer that holds it in place. So replacing the blinker light requires pulling this off. And then up here is the end of the pigtail, and that is a pain to get apart, but not impossible. Still working on a plan on how to try to work this pigtail through that hole. I've taken out all of the screws and the retainer, and this thing is not coming off, so I'm not sure how it does. Well, I think I finally figured it out. If I just come in and kind of just carefully work this up, it starts to kind of wiggle up. So by pulling up on it, it really wasn't really doing anything, but if I just if I just very, very gently work it up, it seems to be coming off. Behind here are 4 Allen wrench bolts that hold the mechanism for the tilt wheel, and you kind of have to work it off. It's hard to do with one hand. Alright, so I've tried to take this thing apart, and the big problem here is that U-joint there doesn't fit inside the hole of this assembly that holds the tilt wheel, and I could use like a Dremel and try to shave off a little bit and see if I can get it around it, but whoever built it, or maybe at the factory or whatever, must have tapped it on with a mallet or something, because it just can't get it off. So I'm gonna do what I don't want to do, but I don't have much of a choice. Is right about here at this junction, I'm gonna cut these wires, and then I'm going to take this guy. So here's the new one, and I'm going to cut it right about the same part of the junction, and this part of the junction right here, and put in some splices. It's not the best thing, but at least that'll fit through this little hole here. I've seen videos of it sliding through here without the tilt wheel because it doesn't have this like U-joint assembly here, but I cannot get it around it, and I don't have much other options other than, like I say, dremeling the U-joint or something to try to make it fit around it. Alright, well, cut it up, and this thing can finally come out now. On this side here, I got all ready to go. Match up the colors. Hopefully they're the same. Alright, so I got it back in place. Here's the new one, the new blinker, and there's the wiring. I was going to bundle this up, but I think it'd be too hard to fit in there, so I'm going to leave them kind of separate so that they can lay flat against the cylinder, kind of like that. It's pretty small. I used the smallest butt splices I could get, and then heat shrunk them to keep them from grounding out, but I'm probably just going to leave it like this, and then it'll sit closer. Need a little coat of paint. So when you put this thing back together, there's this mechanism that basically starts the engine. If I can pull it out, you can kind of see it comes out. When you turn the key, it pushes this in and out, basically. There's this little stud on the end, and this has to loop around that little stud. So when you put the cover on, it actually stays in place. There, like that. It'll still fall off, but at least it's holding on to it. Okay, so this thing sits in there, and as you push it in, it rotates in here. It's really hard to show with one hand, but I'm going to show you. See how it kind of turns, and I'm basically pulling this in and out. That's how you align it. So I need to get it about as close as possible. That's right there. Now I put a bunch of grease on it, so it's very slippery, and basically if I tilt this thing, it's just going to fall out. So it's going to be kind of a balancing act trying to get this whole thing together. The next thing is I got the new ignition switch, and this guy here needs to be in. I can't get the focus. So that side needs to be on like the in position, and you get that by turning the ignition to on while holding the insides of it. So I've already done that, and then this just slides in there. As long as everything lines up, it should just fit. I'm gonna push it in. Alright, so it's in, and when I turn the key, it functions properly. Well, that's great. First time in 30 years. On the new one, it comes with this guard. You gotta pull it off, basically pinch that little end, and then this blue part comes off, and then this goes around the top of the hazard light like that. And then this gets attached with the hole going into that little, the hole going in like this. Well, I got it all back together. It seems to be fine. The ignition works a hell of a lot better than before. Turns properly. Steering lock works. I don't know. Before I put it together, I'm going to take the steering wheel and I'm going to re-grease this thing. It's kind of covered in old grease and bits of copper from the two little spring actuators there. So I'll clean this up, put a little bit of new grease on there, electrical grease. Alright, here we go. Nice. That's great. Alright, tack works. Paint job looks pretty nice. Alright, can live with this.